What if the thing your nervous system has been waiting for, to calm down, to communicate clearly, to stop quietly failing you, costs less than $1, takes 90 seconds, and has been sitting in your spice cabinet this entire time? Not a supplement, not a protocol with 12 steps, one small dried flower bud. Here is what the research reveals, and what almost no one is discussing. The benefits of chewing a whole clove have almost nothing to do with the clove itself. The compound eugenol is real. The antimicrobial effects are real. But those are almost incidental to something far more significant happening in your nervous system the instant you begin to chew. A cascade so precise, so foundational to how your body regulates itself, that understanding it will permanently change how you think about health habits, particularly after the age of 50. I want to take you through 10 specific effects, each one building on the last. But I am going to ask you to stay with me until the 7th minute of this video, because what I have reserved for that point will reframe everything that comes before it. Most content gives you the most dramatic idea at the beginning to capture attention. I am going to do the opposite, because the insight at minute 7 is only meaningful once you understand what precedes it. Let us begin. Before we move to the 10 effects, you need to understand one foundational concept: the cephalic phase response. The cephalic phase is the first phase of digestion, and it occurs entirely in your head before a single molecule of food reaches your stomach. The word cephalic comes from the Greek for head. The brain, upon receiving sensory input, taste, aroma, texture, warmth, immediately begins coordinating the body's digestive and metabolic state. It signals the stomach to produce hydrochloric acid. It primes the pancreas to prepare digestive enzymes. It activates the liver's bile release pathway. Here is what this means in practice. The quality of your digestion is determined not only by what you eat, but by the signal quality your brain receives before food arrives. And this is where the clove becomes something remarkable. Its sensory profile, the sharp warmth from eugenol, the complex bitterness, the aromatic volatiles triggering olfactory receptors, is one of the most powerful cephalic phase activators available from a whole food source. Chewing a single clove before or after a meal fires a precise neurological sequence that sets the tone for your body's entire metabolic response. Effect 1. Optimized gastric acid secretion and enzymatic readiness. Effect 2. A measurable surge in salivary amylase, the enzyme that begins carbohydrate digestion, dramatically reducing post-meal bloating and the heavy, stagnant feeling most people have simply accepted as normal. These two alone are worth noting, but they are the least interesting effects on this list. Coming up next, why chronic bad breath is almost never a dental problem, and what the oral microbiome reveals about what is happening much further down in the gut. Effect 3. Restructuring the oral microbiome. Chronic bad breath, halitosis, is among the most misunderstood symptoms in common health. The conventional response is to mask it. Mouthwash, mints, tongue scrapers. These are cosmetic interventions for a systemic signal. The sulfur-producing anaerobic bacteria responsible for most halitosis thrive in an acidic, low-saliva, protein-rich oral environment. They are not a surface problem. They reflect imbalances in the oral gut axis, a term that is only recently receiving serious research attention in journals such as Cell Host and Microbe and MPJ Biofilms and Microbiomes. Chewing a clove addresses this through two simultaneous mechanisms. The eugenol directly inhibits the enzymatic activity of the bacteria responsible. It does not simply neutralize their output, it disrupts their metabolic function at the cellular level. Simultaneously, the surge in saliva production shifts the oral pH toward alkaline, creating an environment in which these anaerobic species cannot efficiently reproduce. You are not masking a symptom, you are altering the ecosystem. Effect 4. Carminative and mild antispasmodic action in the upper GI tract. When eugenol is delivered in microdoses through saliva, not in large aggressive quantities from oil or extract, it relaxes smooth muscle tension in the stomach lining. The result is a reduction in cramping, nausea related to sluggish motility, and that knotted gastric discomfort that often follows meals or stress. Effect 5. Stabilized blood sugar response. The mechanism here is indirect but well supported. Slow, deliberate chewing is a powerful parasympathetic nervous system activator. The parasympathetic state, rest and digest, directly suppresses cortisol output. And cortisol, the primary stress hormone, is one of the most disruptive forces on insulin sensitivity in existence. Published research in psychoneuroendocrinology has documented the cortisol-insulin interference pathway extensively. By calming the nervous system before and after eating, the body processes glucose with greater efficiency and produces a more modulated insulin response. But here is where the science takes a turn that I did not anticipate when I began looking into this. Stay with me through the next section, because effects 6 and 7 reveal a connection between chewing, the brain's reward circuitry, and appetite regulation that overturns what most of us believe about cravings. Effect 6. Disrupting the post-meal dopamine craving loop. Most people believe that cravings after a meal, the impulse towards something sweet, the restless urge to keep eating despite fullness, are about hunger. They are not. They are about incomplete sensory closure. The brain's reward and satiety centers, particularly the nucleus accumbens and the hypothalamus, are waiting for a sufficiently complex sensory signal to register that eating is finished. Bland, ultra-processed food delivers calories, but fails to deliver the rich, complete sensory experience that evolution wired us to expect. The brain, not yet satisfied neurologically, continues sending signals interpreted as craving. The flavor profile of a single clove, simultaneously warming, bitter, sweet, and pungent, delivers an unusually complete and complex signal to the brain's sensory processing centers. It functions as what researchers call a sensory full stop. The post-meal clove chewing practice sends a clear message to the reward system. The meal is complete. This alone can reduce mindless snacking and sugar-seeking behavior without any act of willpower. The primary physical highway of this axis is the vagus nerve, and this brings us to effect 8, which is the hinge upon which everything else on this list turns. The gut-brain axis is the bidirectional communication highway between the enteric nervous system, sometimes called the second brain, and the central nervous system. It governs mood, digestion regularity, immune response modulation, and even cognitive clarity. The primary physical highway of this axis is the vagus nerve, and this brings us to effect 8, which is the hinge upon which everything else on this list turns. I am going to hold the full explanation of it until minute 7, as I promised, because it requires context. But here is the preview. The vagus nerve is not just involved in digestion. It is the master regulator of your body's inflammatory state, your sleep quality, your cardiovascular variability, and your stress resilience. And rhythmic chewing is one of the most direct non-pharmacological ways to activate it. Before I continue, and this next section is where the real architecture of this practice comes together, I want to say something directly. The information in this video, and in every video on this channel, is built on the same principle driving this entire conversation, that the most profound health tools are often overlooked precisely because they are not profitable to promote. No patent, no subscription, no margin. If that perspective resonates with you, if you believe health knowledge should be clear, deep, and accessible, then subscribing to this channel is one of the most meaningful things you can do right now. Not for an algorithm, because you are choosing to remain part of a conversation that takes the science seriously. Hit subscribe and let us continue. Effect 8. Direct vagus nerve stimulation through rhythmic mechanoreceptor activation. The vagus nerve, cranial nerve X, is the longest nerve in the body. It originates in the brainstem and descends through the neck, chest, and abdomen, interfacing with the heart, lungs, stomach, liver, pancreas, kidneys, and intestines. It carries approximately 80% of its signals upward, from organs to brain, making it the body's primary internal reporting system. High vagal tone is associated with lower inflammatory markers, better cardiovascular variability, more robust immune regulation, reduced anxiety, and deeper, more restorative sleep. Research published in Frontiers in Neuroscience has demonstrated that vagal tone declines measurably with age, sedentary behavior, and chronic psychological stress, all of which converge precisely in the post-50 demographic. Here is what almost no health content addresses: slow rhythmic chewing, particularly chewing that involves firm resistance, as with a whole dried clove, mechanically stimulates the trigeminal and facial nerve networks of the jaw and face. Each deliberate chewing cycle sends a rhythmic afferent pulse, an incoming signal, to the brainstem's vagal nuclei, which responds by increasing parasympathetic output down the vagus nerve to the heart and gut. This is not metaphorical. It is measurable in heart rate variability, the beat-to-beat variation in cardiac timing that serves as a real-time proxy for vagal tone. The act of chewing a single clove for 60 to 90 seconds, done slowly, deliberately, with full sensory attention, produces a quantifiable shift in autonomic balance. Cortisol is suppressed, heart rate variability improves. The inflammatory cytokine cascade, regulated by the cholinergic anti-inflammatory pathway, which runs directly through the vagus nerve, is modulated downward. This is why evening is the optimal time for this practice, not morning. The body's circadian rhythm already shifts toward parasympathetic dominance in the late evening hours. Chewing a clove at this time amplifies that natural transition, improving sleep onset, deepening slow-wave sleep architecture, and reducing the background physiological anxiety that accumulates with age. Effect 9. Immune surveillance enhancement at the body's primary point of entry. Saliva is not simply a lubricant. It is a sophisticated immune fluid. It contains secretory immunoglobulin A, SIG, the body's first-line antibody defense, along with lactoferrin, lysozyme, and antimicrobial peptides. The oral cavity is the most frequently used portal of pathogen entry into the body, and the immune density of that portal is directly proportional to saliva flow rate. Most people over 50 have chronically reduced saliva production, a condition called xerostomia, associated with medication use, mouth breathing, and autonomic decline. This is not a cosmetic issue. It represents a measurable reduction in frontline immune function. Chewing a clove dramatically increases salivary flow through direct gland stimulation, essentially turning up the volume on the immune surveillance system at the body's most exposed surface. But here is the insight I promised, the one that reframes everything. The 10 effects described in this video are not 10 separate benefits of a spice. They are 10 downstream consequences of a single upstream act, restoring a clear, rhythmic, sensory signal to a nervous system that has been operating in chronic, low-grade noise. The clove is not the medicine. The act of presence, deliberate, slow, sensory-rich engagement with something physical, is the medicine. The clove is simply the most potent and precisely suited tool available to make that act both accessible and consistent. Its chemistry amplifies the signal, but the signal itself is what the body is responding to. This is the principle that modern health optimization almost entirely overlooks because it cannot be bottled, patented, or sold at scale. The body's regulatory systems do not fail primarily because they lack raw materials. They fail because they lose the clarity of instruction. The practice of deliberate chewing with a substance as sensorially rich as a whole clove is, in the most literal sense, a way of speaking clearly to a system that has been straining to hear. Effect 10, which is in many ways the most important of all, the cultivation of a habit architecture around physiological presence. The protocol itself is simple by design. Take one single whole clove, place it in the mouth, chew slowly and deliberately for 60 to 90 seconds, not aggressively, not quickly. Allow the saliva to accumulate and mix fully. You may spit out the fibrous remnant or swallow it. Either is acceptable. Do this 2 to 3 times per week, ideally after the largest meal of the day, or during a period of stress in the late afternoon or evening, not daily on an empty stomach, which risks irritation of the gastric lining. Practical precautions. If you are prescribed anticoagulant medications, particularly warfarin, consult your physician before adopting this practice. Eugenol carries a mild antiplatelet effect that may interact with blood thinners at higher doses. 1 clove is a microdose, but the interaction is worth discussing. Discontinue immediately if you experience burning in the mouth, gastric discomfort, or any irritation. Do not practice this during active mouth ulcers or periods of acute gastric inflammation. The point is not to treat a disease. The point is to maintain the quality of communication between your nervous system and your body, the foundation upon which every other health practice rests. If this video shifted something for you, if the idea that the body needs clear signals, not just more inputs, is one you want to keep exploring, then I want to invite you to something. This channel is built for people who are done with dramatic promises and surface-level advice. Every video here is an attempt to go one level deeper than the noise, into the mechanisms, into the physiology, into the principles that actually govern how the body works. Subscribing takes 3 seconds. What it means is that the next time research like this comes across this channel, you will see it. And over time, that compound effect of understanding, of knowing not just what to do, but why your body responds, is one of the most underrated investments you can make in your own health. Subscribe now, share this with someone who needs it, and let me leave you with one final thought. The body is not broken, it is waiting. Somewhere in the accumulation of processed inputs, disrupted sleep, chronic low-grade stress, and the general noise of modern life, the nervous system's internal signal has become harder to read. It is not a failure of the body. It is a failure of communication. The ancient use of aromatic spices across virtually every traditional medicine system in the world, Ayurvedic, Chinese, Mediterranean, Arabic, was never superstition. It was an intuitive recognition of something the science is now beginning to formally document, that the body responds to sensory clarity, to rhythm, to presence, to the deliberate engagement of its own intelligence. 1 clove, 60 to 90 seconds, 2 or 3 times a week, not because it is magic, because the nervous system is listening.